Hi,
Hello.
welcome to the Nostalgia Train Book Club. This is the live show for September, where our book club was Magyk by Angie Sage.
Hold it up. Ooh.
Woo!
You can see our reflection in it. It's a very shiny cover.
Oh, I didn't realize it was so shiny.
Yes. Very shiny and very square for some reason. I don't understand the dimensions of this book, but it also is very fun.
That's nice. I guess I don't really have anything else to say. I'm Violet. This is Mars. Would you like to say any words?
I'm the co-conductor. I chose this book because Violet said, "Hey, what book do you want to read for the book club?" And I said, this is one on my shelf that I remember liking and I think would be fun." And Violet said, "Okay."
That's true. That is what happened. I had vaguely heard of this book. I had heard the name Septimus Heap. That did ring a bell. The cover looked familiar. And when I Googled it, it fit the parameters of what we read here for the Nostalgia Train. So I said yes. Oh, look, Nikki's here. Hi, Nikki.
Hello.
And you read this as a child, right, Mars?
Yeah, so this came out. When did this actually? I don't know when this came out.
It was
2000,
6, maybe?
2005, 2006, something like that. And
2005, yeah.
I don't think I read it like when it first came out. I think I was like 10 or 11 years old, so it would have been like 2008 ish. And I remember really liking it, and I think I got like 2 or 3 books into the series, but like never really finished it out. And I remembered having a good time with it and thought other people might enjoy it.
I do think it was a nice pick. I always like reading something that I am not that familiar with. I'm gonna throw up the spoiler banner because nobody likes being spoiled. Yeah, so do you have any preference of which discussion topic we start with?
I mean, I feel like plot and pacing is like a nice, simple thing to start out with.
Good, because that's what I was gonna choose as well.
Set a baseline for the discussion.
Do we want to give a summary of what this is about? I feel like I never give a summary. I just start talking about it as if everybody always knows.
I can read the back of the book.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So it says, first of all, it says the magic begins here, which I think is very cute. Then it says Septimus Heap, the seventh son of a seventh son, disappears the night he is born, pronounced dead by the midwife. That same night, the baby's father, Silas Heap, comes across an abandoned child in the snow, a newborn girl with violet eyes. Who is this mysterious baby girl, and what really happened to the Heap's beloved son, Septimus?
Wow, that would have really helped if I would have read that before reading the book.
You didn't know anything going into
No,
it?
I went in completely blind.
Oh, interesting. So what did you expect when you went into it?
I was like a little bit disappointed because I thought the book was about Septimus. So when I found out that Septimus was dead and not even in it, I was like, what?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
It was kind of a letdown. But I mean, if I would have read the back of the book, I would have known that from the jump.
I did. That is something that I remembered was the whole like he's dead, but he's not actually dead thing. But I thought that came away earlier in the book than it did, instead of being the literal last thing in the book.
Yeah.
Certainly a choice.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, I'm glad we put the spoilers banner up. I mean, I started getting some suspicions, just because of my basic math skills. Yeah, for the same reasons. I knew when we met Boy 412 who he would be though. See, I didn't know right when we met him, but I was like, oh, kind of like in Star Wars, how Finn doesn't have a name and they name him Finn. He like just had like a
Mhm.
number, and I was like, oh, he's Boy 412. They're gonna give him a name. And when they weren't giving him a name, I was like, this is weird that they just keep calling him Boy
Right?
412. And then I was like, oh, the numbers 412 add up to 7. That's kind of a weird coincidence.
Oh, I hadn't done the math on
So
that.
when that added up to 7, I was kind of like, okay, I see what she was doing. When I realized that, I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So, but I have to say, like numerology, especially like 7 being the most magical number, is kind of a trope that I love. So, I was a fan of that.
I do also enjoy that kind of thing. And also, I just like the name Septimus. I think it's a funny name, but like, it's not silly funny. It's just like uncommon kind of funny.
Agreed. I
Mhm.
totally agree with that. Um, okay, back to plot and pacing. I really enjoyed the first like 15% of this. I was really like, because I listened to the audiobook, I could see the percentages.
Mhm.
I was like really hooked. I thought I wasn't gonna like it. Because Kelly had told me like, oh, it's kind of like fairy tale esque, and like I haven't had the most luck with that kind of style in the book club, and I was like, oh no, maybe it's not going to be my brand of story. But I was really hooked um, into it. But then I felt like a little bit after the 15% mark, it got kind of like, I don't know, the plot kind of seemed like, what's the right way to describe this? A little bit like ambling, like they were like running away. I didn't know where they were going, what their goal was.
Yeah, that's definitely my biggest critique is that it kind of felt for a while there that things were happening without any sufficient like reason for it to happen other than something had to happen for the book to go on.
Yeah, like that hunter guy was after them, and then they were going like had that aunt, and like I was like, huh, okay, but like there it didn't feel like a solid foundation, and it just kind of seemed like
Yeah, there wasn't really a lot of like setup or foreshadowing for anything. That's also the thing is like there's some big I hit myself on the headphones. Ow. There's like some big things that happen, but they come completely out of nowhere like the whole dragon boat thing. Like we didn't know about this huge important part about the wizarding community until like the chapter before it showed up, and I feel like
yes.
that and a few other moments could have been like set up earlier and it would have made things flow a little bit
I
smoother.
totally agree. When that came up, I was like, wow, this is a really cool element, but it came really out of left field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And it was just very weird because it was kind of like, okay, Jenna is the real main character, or if you can call it, it's kind of an ensemble cast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was like thinking, oh, this book is about Septimus, and then this girl Jenna gets introduced, and I'm like, oh, Jenna Heap. Okay, she's actually the main character who we're following. And it's kind of like um, she says goodbye to her parents, but then her parents, or her dad at least, and a few of her brothers end up kind of coming along on the journey. So then I was like, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
like it kind of had seemed like she was leaving her family, but then they were also coming along. So it was like, I don't know. I kind of thought, oh, she was going to go off and have this adventure, but that separation didn't happen, and it was like, oh, okay. I don't know. I just got mixed expectations there, I think.
No, that's totally understandable. I really get that.
So, because I thought, oh, her and um Marcia, the extraordinary wizard, were gonna kind of like run off and like do this thing, and then it's like, oh, actually, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening.
Yeah, immediately run into an issue and like, well, I guess that's an abandoned plot.
Yeah, it's like that did seem more like what was happening, but it wasn't.
Mhm.
Dragon boat. Although they did hint at a place the queens had to go every midsummer. Yeah, like that was cool, like when it got brought up. It just was like, yeah.
Maybe because there's the dragon boat, the ring, and the belt are all connected, and maybe if like when like Marcia put on the belt or something, it had like mentioned something about dragons or whatever, so that the dragon boat didn't come completely out of left field.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of sowing the seeds of things to come.
Yeah. Um yeah, but then the plot did pick back up later in the book. Then I got invested again because um I think you can imagine that I was pretty invested in sort of these rat messengers. And just so when this plot sort of kind of got things going again, then I was a little bit back into it.
Mhm. How did you feel about the ending?
Um well, by that point, like as an adult reader, I was pretty positive where the dominoes were headed. But I really liked it, and I could have imagined that if I had read this as a child, I would have just been blown away. Like,
Mhm.
so it definitely brought my rating up for the book, even though that sort of mid midpoint section, not midpoint, Act Two section was kind of jumbled for me. It really tied things up nicely because I mean, who doesn't love a good like reveal like that? Like,
Mhm.
it was so satisfying.
I feel like maybe it wrapped up a little bit too nicely.
Oh, come
Like
on.
it didn't really give much of a lead into the rest of the series. Like thinking about
Okay.
it, this felt a lot like a prequel rather than a real first book in a series to me, if that's a distinction I can make. Like if that
Oh,
makes sense.
okay. Fair enough. I haven't read the rest of the series, so I can't say, but
I don't remember anything that happens, but there's in my copy there's like 100-page novella that follows what's the older brother's name? Simon, I
Simon,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, it follows him, and I feel like that does such a good job of showing you, okay, this is where the rest of the series is going. And if I hadn't read that, I would have gotten to the end of this book and just been like, well, that wrapped up nicely. I guess I don't have to read the rest.
See, I do recall you saying that yours had a novella at the end. So then when I got to the end of the story in my audiobook, I was hoping that my audiobook would include that and it didn't. And I was like, oh man. So then it did leave me wanting more. So I think that was a good sign um, that I was still craving more in the world. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes with book club books, I'm like, get it over with already. Because again, like, I'm in my 30s. I'm not the intended audience for these books.
That's entirely fair.
Um, what do we want to talk about next? Tropes or characters or
I like characters. There's a lot of them.
there are a lot of them.
Who's your favorite?
The messenger rat.
I should have seen that coming.
Yeah, I liked the messenger rat because he was an interesting point of view to get switched to. I thought it was a funny, just a quirky little part of the world. Yeah, it was cute.
I think my favorite, probably Marcia. I think she's just a very interesting character, and seeing her like relationship with Silas and the rest of the Heap family was very cool. And then she's like kind of got this tough exterior, but also she kind of cares about people more than she lets on.
I like her too. In the audiobook, they said it Marcia, but when I see it spelt, it is spelt Marcia. So
Probably not that important.
I know, but that's just one thing about being an audiobook listener that it gets on my nerves.
Oh, there is another thing that you didn't get for the audiobook. Let me see if I can find it. So, anytime there's a magical word, it's in a different font.
Ooh.
So, like, charms, it says magic a bunch of times. It's in like a slightly fancier font and it's bold. And I thought that was really cool. It very like made a distinction between like these are just words we're saying and this is a spell we're casting.
Yes. Feel like I have to read next. Yeah. The boat or Aunt Zelda.
Aunt Zelda's also a very cool character.
It was like that on Libby, even in the dyslexic font. Interesting.
Cool. One thing about Aunt Zelda is that we learn that she's a witch, but we don't get really an explanation of what the difference between a witch and a wizard are.
Yeah, that's true. I in general felt like even the concept of like the magic system was very like soft and wishy-washy.
Mm-hmm.
So we get that the eyes shift colors, which I've mentioned before in like past book club discussions. I do like that. That's also kind of a trope that I'm kind of trash for. But yeah, the magic was very soft. And it left me wondering a lot of things, but I think it was very intentionally whimsical. So,
This, okay, this might be a controversial statement, but I feel like if this had the like opportunities that Harry Potter had, where like if it was made into a movie, I feel like this would have had just as much fame as Harry Potter because it fits this a similar niche in my head.
only the white witches could protect the boat dragon con. Yeah, you know what? I'm not. Hold on, let me pull up the writing style and prose. In my mind, I was comparing this a lot to Harry Potter. It reminded me of Harry Potter. Like the writing style reminded me a bit of Neil Gaiman in a way.
I see that.
I haven't actually read like Terry Pratchett, but the kind of idea of this sort of like whimsical fantasy, self-aware fantasy, absurdist fantasy. But J.K. Rowling also, it reminded me of sometimes of her fantasy as well. Even at times reminded me of Inkheart, just because her dad, Jenna's dad was along for the ride in that sort of father-daughter familial. I don't know.
That's
There's
fair.
just it really. I felt like people who liked Harry Potter, people who liked Inkheart, would also enjoy Magic.
I think it's a very fair statement to make.
And I actually wondered why it didn't get as much hype as, some other books.
I don't know because people were definitely talking about it. Like I remember seeing stuff about it for a little while, but it kind of just fell off.
Yeah, it definitely had hype, but they didn't have a film adaptation like those did.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have any thoughts about the prose and writing style?
Just that it's very easy to read. It doesn't really have this like sometimes when you read high fantasy, it feels like there's this barrier between you and the book because it's like breaking into a new world, but this felt very accessible and it's probably because it literally says on the book ages 8 to 12, but like it was very easy to get into it and it's simply written so that like you don't like it's a thick book. It's got quite the chunk to it, but it didn't feel like it when I was reading because I was just going through the pages so quickly.
Yeah, but I also don't feel like it dumbs it down either. Like
Mm.
it's clever and funny, and it sometimes like I don't want to say breaks the fourth wall, but it's clever. Like
It's aware of what it is as a
yeah,
fantasy.
yeah. Oh, I wish I would have written down some examples where it has like those little quippy moments where it's not like it's talking directly to reader, but it makes like funny little observations.
Hmm.
It's not taking itself too seriously while still telling the story. Again, like something that we saw in the Graveyard Book also did that at times, you know.
Yeah.
The dead or frozen babies and children made me double think. Strange. Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of children's books have these like moments of darkness that children might not recognize right away, but then reading it as an adult, you're like, oh, that's actually really dark.
Yeah. Yeah, even like when they have their friend, was it Sally who had was it Sally who had
The innkeeper.
the inn, and then the hunter or whatever goes there and like burns it all down?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what happens? And I was like, wow, did they just like massacre all those like innocent people? Like I was like, that was really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But then we found out later that Sally didn't get killed, like she got out. But I thought like, okay, that was super dark.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that time you don't know that she had gotten out. Yeah, but for like the first chapter, yeah. Yeah, there's also dark stuff in there. Yeah. Yeah, that scene, when I read it, I was like, oh, I didn't think they were gonna go there. Like, oh.
How do you feel? Well, I guess since you've read the audiobook, you wouldn't notice, but like all the different changes to the spelling, like how magic is YK instead of IC, and like darkness is DARKENESSE. Like they have two extra E's in it.
Oh.
How do you feel about that kind of thing?
Oh, of course, yeah, I wouldn't have known that with the audiobook.
Yeah.
Oh,
You can see the names of the other books in the series all have different spellings. So like flight is FLYTE. Physic is spelled pretty much the same as usual, but it's a K at the end. Quest has an E at the end. Fire is a Y instead of an I.
mm, I don't know. I guess maybe I don't like it. Well, how do you feel about it?
I feel like in this kind of book, it works because it is just like a silly book. And like, yeah, why wouldn't they spell things a little bit funny? But most of the time, I'm not a huge fan of spelling changes like that. But in this case, I think it's not anything like they're not doing it to be like, this is to distinguish this magic from all the fake magic and stuff. It's not like pretentious, if that makes sense.
Okay, I get what you're saying. It's more like quirky instead of
Yeah.
pretentious. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I think okay. I mean, I'm fine with it, but I'm not like in love with it.
That's fair.
Um, okay. Tropes, fantasy tropes, and wizard tropes, because I feel like there were several.
Oh, yeah, quite a few. The Secret Princess,
Oh, the secret princess.
which like I feel like that's such a cliche, but I love that trope. It's always a good one for me.
And like, especially since they kept calling her princess, and like, she's like, "What do you guys mean?" And they're like, "You're a princess," and then later they're like still calling her princess, and she's like, "I don't get it." Like, And like nobody like was explaining it to her. But like I get it. Like in a kid's book, like yeah, it has to be like that. But as an adult reader, it's like, come on, girl.
I mean, she is only like 10 years old, so.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I liked the idea of there being like one sort of head wizard, and them having like an apprentice.
Hmm.
I like that trope quite a
I
bit,
like how she's
actually.
the extraordinary wizard. I think that's one of the things that makes this book seem like okay, it's silly, and we know it's silly, and we're gonna play into it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's that self-aware silliness of the tone that you're a princess. Oh, Nikki says they were almost named princess, literally.
Interesting.
They say, but if I were 10 and found out that I was a princess, I would have been like, where do I start my very own princess diary training? Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I'm trying to think what other like big main tropes were in it.
I mean, the seventh son of a seventh son. Like, that's a classic.
Yeah. Hey, Kelly. You also had just like a society where some people had magic, some didn't. You
But it also wasn't very clear on, like, who could learn magic and who couldn't. It was more just like some people do and some people don't.
yeah, well
That
it
was
seemed
interesting.
yeah, it wasn't that clear. Um no, it wasn't clear. Um yeah, royalty obviously is a trope, a fantasy trope. I mean
Mm-hmm.
that was part of it. Eye color, like I mentioned before, to distinguish.
How'd you feel about the ghosts?
Oh my gosh, I loved the ghosts.
Right?
I love the ghosts. And again, like yeah, like, it did remind me of Harry Potter, like it did. I can't say that it didn't. Um but they're so cool. I loved that the ghosts could only go to the places they'd been while they were living, so they couldn't go in the girls' bathroom. That was so funny.
Mm-hmm. And when he was on the boat, and he's like, "I would come like have dinner, but if I leave this boat, I'll be like whisked away because I never like stepped foot out of the boat when I was in this area." I'm like, that's a very clever loophole.
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah, it was really funny. Okay, number 7, yeah. Also, what's the fascination? Because it's the most magical number. John Daniel was not lucky, though. He was a necromancer, which I love necromancers.
Mm-hmm.
The ancient ones. Yeah, I mean, John Daniel was also like fulfilling a trope of like the evil bad guy. I don't even know what to it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the tropes it uses are like very basic ones, and it doesn't really like do anything different with them, but I also don't mind that it kind of just uses the tropes as they are because it does it in a way that's like not. It's still a very fun way to use these tropes.
I agree. I think it's because, okay, first of all, readers love tropes. Like, you see that already, like with the romance genre, it's all about tropes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why can't fantasy just be the same? Like, hey, these are the tropes that everybody loves, and that Angie Sage, like, put this fun writing style to it, made it accessible for this age range. Um, what more can you ask for? And then just making original concepts to it, like the messenger rats,
Mm-hmm.
just and just fun little things. And I even think just the fact that the characters like had just a basic bland name like Jenna, like it was just so like bland and unexpected. Like
Well, according to the family tree, that was Silas's mom's name, so she's technically named after her grandma, which I think is cute.
that is so cute. Like I think that's so cute because you have like all these like characters. Like I just thought it was like, oh, we're getting like this princess, this big character, and like her name is just Jenna, and it's just like I was like, oh, okay.
I like the brothers, how there's like Jojo and Nico, or Nico. I don't know how it's pronounced, but it's spelled like Nick O, so that's how I say it in my head.
I think that's how they said it in the audiobook too. I think they said Nico.
Okay. It's just really funny. And then you have Septimus.
Oh, and you have the dog, Maxie.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fun cast of characters. A lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
Other than, like I said, the pacing getting a little bit weird. Yeah, love a good wolfhound. And I mean, again, maybe the twist being a little bit obvious when you're like older and have read a lot of fantasy books.
Mm-hmm. But if this was like one of the first high fantasy books I picked up, I would have been blown away.
Yeah.
I would have been like, whoa, I didn't see that coming.
But like Nikki said they had figured it out like right when um the boy was introduced.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that comment? Oh, it's way up here. But like I didn't figure it out till quite a bit later.
What did you think about the other Septimus Heap that was introduced? Our
Well,
red herring.
when he was first introduced, I was well that's by that point then I was kind of like had already got an inkling that the other boy was, and that just by so then when the other one was introduced I was like, oh, okay, so the other boy definitely is, because now they're confirming that Septimus Heap is alive.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know who the imposter was, but it was clear it wasn't Septimus Heap. So I didn't know who he was, but I knew he was not. um I felt bad for him though.
Yeah. Definitely got the short end of the stick in a couple of places.
Yeah.
Did your audiobook have. Where is it? Oh, I flipped too far. There's too many bonus things in here. It's, after the last chapter, it's what Aunt Zelda saw in the duck pond.
Yes.
Okay. Because I thought that was cute how we kind of just went and like learned a little bit more about the backstory.
Mm-hmm. I was mad. I was like, do not try to fool me. Give that boy to his true name. Such a sad character though, yeah. I hate that he died and didn't get reunited with his mother. That's alright, we have a spoilers tag. Yeah, that actually was really sad. I mean, I know his mom like was pretty like evil for taking the real Septimus and all that, but it was a sad scene.
Yeah. Trying to remind myself of all the stuff that happened at the end because it has the after where it literally tells you what happens to every single character. I don't even remember who half of these people were. Anyway. Do you think you're gonna continue on?
I probably will, if my library has them. I will check if my library has the rest of them.
I definitely recommend reading The Dark Toad, the novella, because I feel like that really like shows you like, okay, this is what we're dealing with in the future. So if you can find that.
Yeah, I probably also wouldn't read it immediately just because.
Mm.
Just because we have Steinoween.
Yeah, it's not really. I wouldn't call it a priority for me. Like, I would like to read the rest of the series, but I'm thinking it's going to be a filling prompts kind of series for me. Like, I'm doing Bookopoly next month, and one of the prompts that Laura has given to me for the community shelf section is a book with an animal POV. And I'm like, well, if Stanley comes back, then I can use this for that. But
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I would like put other books aside to read the rest of this series.
I get that. Yeah. Okay, we have one last banner. I mean, this is like the shortest discussion ever. Themes, symbols, and motifs. It's my favorite banner because I never prepare anything and I just have to come up with them on the fly.
I feel like there was a bunch that could have been like symbols and stuff, like dragons. If we had more dragon stuff scattered about, that would have made a great symbol throughout, but we didn't. And it goes back to my issue with like not a lot being properly foreshadowed or hinted at.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a theme, I think, of course, has to be like family.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a general theme.
Yeah, I feel like this book doesn't really do a lot of like in depth stuff. It's very much like what you read is what there is.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, not every book has to have all of this symbolism and deep analysis to it. Like, sometimes books are just simple and fun.
That's true. Dragon stuff did happen out of nowhere. But the green glowing of the dragon eyes tied it to the heaps.
Speaking of the dragon, so the dragon has to do with Ra. So do we think this book takes place in the real world? Because that's definitely something I was like a little bit taken aback. I had the same reaction to that as I did to Howl going to Wales.
Yeah, I was also wondering about that in this book just because we read Howl's Moving Castle.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the same kind of question like, what is this? What is the greater world
Yeah, I really
happening
hope we
here?
explore more of the world in future books.
What's going on with this? The kingdom and the greater lore of the land. The nature vibes were like ours. Yeah. I definitely, well, I mean, I think my favorite motif in it was the reoccurring imagery of the messenger rats reappearing throughout it,
Mm-hmm.
and how sometimes they were just rats, and you had to be like, are you a messenger rat or are you just a rat? And you didn't know. Sometimes rats are more than what they appear to the eye. Sometimes they're holding really important messages.
Mm-hmm. I did not remember the messenger rats going into this read. So when I turned the page and there was a picture of it. Oh, there's a map. I didn't know there was a map in this book. Share with the class.
Ooh, fancy.
I genuinely did not know that was in here. But what's the chapter with the rat? Page 215. Because there's like little pictures at the start of every chapter. And when I turned the page and I saw this, I was like, oh, Violet is going to have a great time. And there's like a couple of different ones, like Aunt Zelda. And
Aww.
there's one of Alver as a ghost, like flying through the air. There's a little picture of Jenna. I think the artwork is very cute in this book.
Oh, what do you think about that, like, curse that they put on the hunter?
Oh, where he just became a buffoon?
Yeah,
I
and like
thought that
went
was
off to join
very
the
weird.
circus. I thought it was a kind of cruel, actually.
Yeah. We're just like, I mean, at least they didn't kill him.
It was like a little bit over the top, in my opinion. Like I was like, wow, that was like overdoing it. I thought.
But it is definitely the kind of thing where, like, if a 10-year-old was reading this book and they were like, okay, what would I do to this guy if I couldn't kill him? I know. Turn him into a circus man.
Yeah, it kind of like I don't know. I don't know. That seemed kind of nasty to me. I was like, okay, I get he was like coming after them and all that, but
Hmm.
we just had like that dialogue with him. Maybe seemed to be rubbing it in a bit.
Yeah, the kids were a little bit nasty to him, but also they're children, so.
Fair enough. It is fair enough.
Anything else? Any other topics you'd like to
I
bring
don't
up?
think I really have anything else to say. I mean, I think overall it was really interesting. It did leave me wanting to know more about the world. Um, just because we were introduced to so many things like the young army and sort of the system with the extraordinary wizard and their apprentice and the ghosts and the monarchy. And I'm just curious about some of the things going on outside of the plot, just of the system of the world, and I didn't really find out
Mm-hmm.
more. But again, we're restricted to the confines of the plot, so and it's
Yeah.
a kid's book.
And it's definitely something not meant for someone our age.
Yeah,
We are
it's
not the
true.
intended audience.
And it did seem like a lot of characters for like a kid's story.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think the pacing was the biggest issue, like the plot and pacing. Like if you would have just tweaked a few little things
Just
with the
straightened
plot and
out that
pacing.
middle section.
Yeah, foreshadowed the dragony bit. Yeah, straightened out that weird chase scene a little bit. Ironed some of those kinks out there. It could have been really, because the rest was so good.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely the weak spot in this story for me. It was the plot and pacing. Because the prose itself was great. The
Mm-hmm.
characters, writing style, all that was good.
Definitely. I agree 100%.
Wait, what is chat saying here? I mean, I was like, What? I mean, I was like out of here. Imposter. Rude imposter. Huh? In what context was this?
I don't remember. That was 2 whole minutes ago. I can't remember what we were saying.
Oh, did I miss a comment from 2 minutes ago? My bad. Okay. Well, should we call it there?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I think we had a good discussion.
I agree. We had a great discussion. Once again, I will put up the banner for Steinoween, happening
Woo!
all October long. The live show will be this time-ish next month, or maybe later, because of time zones.
Laura's hosting kickoff sprints on Sunday.
That's true. Yes. Laura's hosting reading sprints. I'll probably pop in at some point. What else did I want to say? I'm sure my brain is like shutting down. Oh yeah, no book club pick in November because of NaNoWriMo.
Are you gonna announce December's or not yet?
Well, December we are going to be reading Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Chronicles of Narnia. I don't have a co-conductor signed on as of right now. Maybe I don't need one. Maybe I'm just going to have co-hosts.
That's fair.
Because, I don't know, nobody signed up or specifically for that one, so I'm trying to just do that one old school.
We got some excitement for things to come.
Hoping I find some physical Goosebumps to collect this month. Yeah, I've never read it either, so I'm excited.
Really? I'm excited for you too.
It's technically actually book 2 in the series, but
Mm-hmm.
I've heard the first one is more of like a prequel.
Oh yeah, it's the. Have you seen the movie of Narnia?
Mm-hmm.
So you know how they go to stay at the person's house? The first book is the guy whose house they're at's story.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
and it kind of just gives you an overview of the world, I guess. Like the kind of magic we're dealing with.
Okay, Nikki wants to be the or not Nikki. Kelly wants to be the co-conductor.
Close enough. You had a 50-50 shot there.
Yeah. Yeah, I have some of the physical books for Steinoween. So I think I'm going to start off with this one.
The only one that I know for sure I'm reading is The Werewolf of Fever Swamp because my older sister was terrified of that book growing up to the point where it was banned from our house. And so it's like the Goosebumps book in my head.
Oh yeah, this one is these two are the ones that I bought like expensive because which one do I have? This is the one that I always loved, A Day at Horrorland. And this is the one that was the Goosebumps book in my head, Beast from the East.
Interesting.
Because my mom always told me it was too scary because she would like read it with my brother at night. And I was not allowed to go in the room when they were reading it together.
Oh.
So, because it was too scary for me. So in my head, this was like the scary book.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Woo. Everyone read Goosebumps books next month.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to also read a Fear Street book because I know that they were like revamped and yeah, so I think my library has some, so we'll see what I manage.
There's a bunch on Scribd.
Oh, I have not even really checked out what Scribd has for Stein books yet, which is kind of crazy since I'm doing a readathon.
Yeah, there's like at least a dozen like miscellaneous R.L. Stein books.
Wait, hold on. What? Oops. Baby Goth Me loved the scary books, but it was scary stories to tell in the dark that stands out to me. I've thought about doing that one actually for the book club, maybe next October. because the spider pimple. Okay, well, thank you, Mar, so much for being the co-conductor and suggesting this book. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, anytime.
And thank you, Nikki, for participating in chat, and Kelly for also showing up and reading the book and participating along with us this month. That was really fun, everybody. Anything else you want to say?
Nope, I think we're
Okay.
good.
Bye.